final guest, Martin Clark, was with us a month or so ago, does all about his incredible work in Africa, including raising leopards and tracking gorillas.
Martin's only been back in the country a few days, and the counting, and he's pretty much come straight from the airport to the mustard sofa, so thank you so much, Martin, for coming back in.
Okay.
We had such a great chat last time, but we ran out of time, so I'm so excited to catch up. Just to recap, you got to the point where you released Penny back into the wild, back into Sharma Game Reserve, and that was in 1977?
77, yeah.
But we were just starting to talk about who else was with you at the camp. Let's go from there.
Okay, well, I think they were all heroes in their own way.
Yeah.
But one unsung hero, I think, is Makkede. Now, we go back to 1960, where he was working with George Adamson, who was the game warden of most of northern Kenya at that time. And there's some incredible photographs of him that David Attenborough has introduced in documentaries of Makkede helping Elsa with her first kill out of a river. And David Attenborough said, you know, this is one of the most incredible photographs he'd ever seen. That was back in 1961.
Yeah, amazing.
So when did you first meet Makkede then?
Well, I went out there in 1976 to work with Joy on the similar project, but involving Penny the leopard.
Yes.
And so one day, spent 3 weeks or so at Joy's house trying to control the leopard. It was very difficult to...
I imagine that's quite a long process to...
Absolutely, yeah. Trying to sort of find out who was going to be the alpha male between the two of us. And one day this tall, rangy African walks down the lawn and sits down, and he looks at me, he's shaking his head.
Oh no, doing it wrong.
What is this poor white boy doing from England, trying to sort of control this untamable animal?
Yeah.
But by the time we got up to Sharma, everyone was best of friends, and Penny was fine.
And so generally people got on quite well with her, even though, I mean, technically she's a wild animal and everyone has to remember
Absolutely.
that.
I think she had a different attitude to everyone.
Right.
For me, I think I was very much an older brother to her. She could take liberties with me. She'd ambush me and attack me, and we were pretty much on an equal footing.
That sounds scary, though.
It sounds, but it wasn't. It was good fun.
Okay.
But with Joy, she was fit and healthy, but she wasn't strong, and so it was difficult for her to, say, push Penny down if she reared up. So I was spending a lot of time, obviously, keeping Penny from doing too much harm to Joy.
Yeah.
As far as Makkede was concerned, it was a very curious relationship that Penny had with Makkede. She didn't quite know what box to put him into. She was very cautious with him and would perhaps approach him, snarl a little bit and growl, and give him the occasional little thump with the paw. And he would just tap her on the nose with his stick if she got a little bit out of hand.
Is this the case of sort of, say, establishing the hierarchy for, like, I'm sure if Penny wanted to, she could
annihilate you.
She could kill someone, couldn't she? So the fact that she's not doing that is, I think, quite reassuring from your point of view that it's just a tap or a paw or... That's scary to think about it.
Yeah.
But so when you say kind of, you know, she was pushing the limits or she'd, you know, take liberties, how vicious are we talking?
Well, it's a natural aggression, and certainly an animal like a leopard, I think it's just her nature comes out. She hadn't been brought up with her brothers and sisters as she would normally have been, and so we were all she had.
You never had a leopard bite or anything like that?
I had a couple of scars.
But you might have some snake bites.
Well, luckily Makkede saved my life about 3 times. First time was from sitting on a snake. The second time was when I trod on one and he came right up to
Just wouldn't be just a run-of-the-mill grass snake, I imagine.
No, cobra.
Cobra?
Puff adder, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And the third time was when we were fishing. He managed to say, well, we don't want to fish there because there's a 12-foot crocodile in that pool. So, yeah, you know, he's very good at that.
Is fishing the sort of thing you did to relax? Okay.
That was our sort of Sunday afternoon relaxation. Once you thrash the crocs out of the pools, that was fun. It became actually something of a necessity because the roads were wiped out by the rains. And we found that fish was the best fresh food that we could get.
Yeah.
And then one night, 3 lions went and killed a water buffalo right outside the camp. And we couldn't see anything, but we could hear it.
Oh,
it was
that must have been terrifying.
monstrous sounds for hours going on. The next morning, me and Makkede walked outside at dawn. He was holding his spear, and we literally shooed the lions away.
Okay.
And they just sort of sulked in the bushes, looking at each other and looking at us. And his motives were quite clear, because behind me came the cook with his big cleaver and started hacking off what's left of the meat.
Well, that's how it works, isn't it? In nature and things.
Yeah.
We had buffalo steaks for Christmas.
And 3 very annoyed lions.
And 3 rather peaked off lions.
It's a turkey for a one-off, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Buffalo steaks for Christmas.
especially if you've had to wrestle it from a lion. I think that's
a great story. It almost sounds made up, but it's not, is it? 'Cause we've seen a photo, and it's all documented, so...
Amazing stuff. And then, so what happened to the camp eventually?
Well, in 2006, they built a luxury tented camp on the same site. And I was invited out there the first time in 2009 and asked about Makkede. Now, I know that everyone else had died by then,
Right.
This is many years later, obviously, but I didn't know about Makkede. And they said they'd look into it. And about 9 months later, I was out there again and said, we found him. I couldn't believe it. So he said, yeah, it's about 60 miles away. A couple of mud huts and a little animal enclosure that he's got. And we drove out there. And of course, I was expecting to find something like an 85-year-old man, infirm, perhaps in hospital or something. He said, no, he's walked 5 miles to the next village.
Wow.
So while they drove off and got him, I was surrounded by all his family, wondering very curious as to what I was doing there, looking for the grand old mosaic of the community.
Yeah.
So they brought him back, and he diminished quite a bit. He was smaller than I remember him, and he walked back, and no sort of celebration or anything. He just got some stools out, get those stools out, and we sat down in the shade of his mud hut. I prepared about a dozen photographs or so, and we were looking through them, and we were laughing and joking at these pictures, and it all came back, and the ice broke.
Yeah.
And I was walking back towards the Land Rover, and he picks up the photographs and he waves them in the air with all his family around him and said, there you are, I told you I was famous.
Oh.
Bless him.
What a moment.
Yeah, it must be lovely, because how many years apart were those two members then? It must be about 30 or...
32 years.
Yeah.
So it was quite a moment, and he gave me a great big hug, which must have been very difficult for him in front of all his family like that, because he was in a very prominent position that he had within the community.
Right.
To sort of show that sort of emotion. And it was about 6 months later that I heard that he'd died of old age, and I think that reunion was just meant to happen.
Yeah, well, what incredible timing. Great timing.
Absolutely.
And was he ever interested in vice versa? Obviously, you were learning all about his life and the whatnot. Was he interested in England and those kind of things? Did you have a cultural exchange, or was it always kind of on his side?
No, he wasn't of that generation.
Right, fair enough.
I think he was just a bit, after his time that...
Yeah. What an incredible guy. Then.
Yeah, it's such a moving story, isn't it? It sort of squares the circle, if you like, of where you began and coming back to meet towards the end. And the integral part of that, of course, was Penny. And very briefly, about 30 seconds left, did you ever see her when you came back?
Well, the story of Penny's, the last sighting of her, if you like, she had 2 cubs. That was documented. And a teacher, an English teacher and a family were camping out, and suddenly 3 leopards raided their camp, and they all scurried back into their vehicle, and they spotted that the main leopard had got a collar on, which was obviously
it must have
Penny.
been her. How lovely.
If
So
only
she's
had longer.
fine. She's fine with 2 cubs. Thank
Thank you, Mark,
so
for coming
much.
back to us.
And sadly, that's all we have time for today.